Welcome back, guys. It's Mrs. Garcia. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, and I'm so excited to see you guys again. Today we're starting a new unit, Unit 12, Contemporary Florida. And in this unit, we will look at the civil rights movement in Florida. Now for this lesson, you're going to need paper and pencil, so go ahead and get that while we get started. Awesome. Did you know that having background knowledge on a topic helps you understand new information? So today I'm going to give you a little bit of background knowledge so that way you can understand a little bit better what the civil rights movement is. The civil rights movement generally is thought to have occurred in the years between 1954 and 1968. Although the search for equality started long before that and it continues even now. Florida played its own part in the civil rights movement. For example, the Brooklyn Dodgers established Dodgertown in Vero Beach, where Jackie Robinson played and broke the color barrier. And Dr. Martin Luther King's visit to St. Augustine, which led to his arrest, then protests, and then violence against the protesters that helped get the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed into law. So why do you think this is important? Well, this information is going to help you understand the passage that we're going to be reading today. And the title of the passage today is The Civil Rights Movement in Florida. Now, let's look at the standards that we will be learning in this lesson.
So today, the first standard that we're going to be using is our I-11, which is kind of a review because we did this the first week, which is refer to details and examples in a text when explaining what the text says explicitly, which, you know, is kind of given, or drawing inferences when it's implicitly, where you have to get more clues to understand what the text is saying. And then, of course, our I-12, which is determine the main idea of a text and explain how it is supported by key details and summarize the text. What will you be able to do by the end of this lesson? You will be able to identify the main idea or start to identify the main idea. And you will also be able to write a summary of the civil rights movement in Florida.
So before we get started, let's activate our prior knowledge. So let's look at some of the text features of this text to see what do you guys think it's going to be about. So let's look at the title. The title is The Civil Rights Movement in Florida. Now I see a picture right here with a caption and 2 dates. I don't see any headings. I see lots of paragraphs. I see another picture on page 2 with another caption and 2 dates. And again, lots of paragraphs. So, what do you think the text is going to be about? Yeah, that's right. I think the title gave it away. The Civil Rights Movement in Florida. But let's learn a little bit more. And like I said earlier, today we're going to be focusing on what? On main idea and summary. So I'm going to show you here a little strategy to help you understand main idea. So we have here that you can chunk, your text and then put it together to come up with main idea. What is that, Ms. Garcia? Let me tell you. So when you get your passage, okay, you're going to chunk it. And I always tell my students to either chunk it into paragraphs or sections, depending on how long the paragraphs are. So you read the paragraph and then you stop. And then you ask yourself, what is most important in what you just read? Then you say it out loud in your own words. Yes, and after that, you jot it down. Perfect. Then you repeat these steps for each paragraph or section. And after you have jotted down for each paragraph or section, you add them all up and you get the main idea of that text, which is what the text is mostly about. Awesome. Okay, so before we read the text, remember that in informational text, authors are often trying to teach you something. They have a big idea, which is what we call the main idea. Okay, there are times that the main idea is explicitly stated. Like for example, when you hear an ambulance, what do? we usually know that there is an emergency, so cars usually tend to move to the side of the road so that ambulance can pass by without any problems. But sometimes the main idea is not explicitly stated, it's implicitly. That's when you have to put all the information together to come up with the main idea, which this strategy right here is perfect for that. So let's number our paragraphs and then get started. So this one right here is paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Perfect. Now let's get started. The civil rights movement began when Black Americans were not treated with the same fairness and equality as white Americans. This is called discrimination. Even after the Civil War ended and slaves were freed by President Lincoln, it would take Black Americans, African Americans, many years and a long, difficult fight to get what Abraham Lincoln had intended for them to have, which is equality. Now, remember, we are reading, stopping, and before we jot down, we have to think about a question. What is most important in what you just read? What's most important? Now say it out loud in your own words. Try not to use words from the author. Now we're going to write it down. This is when the paper and pencil comes in handy. Okay, so after you get your paper and pencil, we're going to divide this paper into two. So you need one section for paragraphs, and then the next section is for a short summary. Excellent. Now we just read paragraph number 1, so we can definitely write 1. Now, what did you think the paragraph 1 was mostly about? Yes, African Americans waited a long time for what? Equality. So let's write it down. African Americans waited a long time for equality. Okay, now let's get paragraph number 2 ready and let's continue. As early as 1904, Florida's African Americans were working to improve their lives. Segregation forced blacks and whites to attend different schools, and the quality of education was not as good for black children. As a result, African Americans often needed to supplement their education by creating their own schools. In Florida, Mary McLeod Bethune opened the Daytona Literacy and Industrial Training School for Negro girls. So we stop there. After we read, we stop and think. What is most important in what you just read? Say it out loud in your own words. I want to help you. Okay? So in that paragraph, they talked about black and whites had different types of education. The education wasn't the same. Okay? So let's write it down. Black and whites had different education. Now, I'm going to ask you to do number 3 on your own. So get ready. In 1909, on the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birthday, the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, was formed. Its founders consisted of both black and white leaders. Since its creation, the NAACP has continued to fight for equal rights and the end of racial discrimination through the use of legal actions and publicity. So we stop and think again. What is most important in what you just read? And we say it in our own words. You can say it here, you can say it out loud. In my own words, what we just read about. What's important about that paragraph? Write it down. Good. It's okay if you didn't finish. Don't worry, okay? You can finish later once we're done. Let's continue with paragraph number 4. In the 1940s, word began to spread across Florida that racial changes would occur soon. World War II was being fought in Europe, and one focus was to stop Hitler's racist treatment of the Jews. African Americans were excited by this movement because if the United States was fighting racism abroad, then it would definitely want to end racism in its own backyard. The NAACP in Florida started a campaign called the Double V, Victory Against Racism Overseas and Against Racism at Home. This campaign focused Florida's attention on the policy of Southern segregation. Now this paragraph, I know that has a lot of information, but you're focusing on what? On the most important one. So what is most important of paragraph number 4? Yes, I'm going to help you. They were excited to end racism, guys. Remember, United States was what? Fighting also in Europe. So they thought, either ending over there, they're most definitely going to end it here too. So by now, you guys should have a short summary for paragraph 3 and a short summary for paragraph 4. You can finish it after this. So this is it for today, guys. Remember that we were focusing on main idea, writing a short summary, so that way, once we're finished, we can figure out what the main idea is. I know that today is Wednesday, so you still have work to do the rest of the week. I can't wait to see you guys next week. Make sure you're checking in with your teachers. Enjoy your week and your weekend, and see you next Monday. Adios.